Tech-savvy critics of the recent poll say the Smartmatic system suffers from flaws that are not limited to technical glitches. They propose to solve these issues by pushing that the next elections use something called open source software. Here's a closer look at their call for more transparent technology.
At dahil sa automated na ang halalan, naging mabilis ang bilangan ng boto sa lokal na halalan.
If the automated elections proved anything, it's that computers are light years faster than people when it comes to counting. But many IT experts say faster does not necessarily mean better. After the initial euphoria over the speed of the counting, doubts began to emerge about the reliability of the automated polls as losing candidates lobbed complaint after complaint with the COMELEC alleging fraud. By removing the human element, poll automation was supposed to minimize or even eliminate errors and cheating. But substituting computers for humans also had one critical drawback.
Since computer programs, by necessity and by their speed, cannot make counting public.
How do you know the PICO's machines were counting votes correctly? Senpeg's Manalastas argues that a lot of doubts about the automated polls could have been avoided if there was a thorough public review of the program used in the automated election system. He believes that the COMELEC opted to use software that was, by design, open to public scrutiny. Many of the problems that plagued the May 10 polls could have been avoided.
I believe that open source is the answer to the secret voting, public counting requirement of our law.
Open source means the program that the machines run, the instructions that tell them how to count and where to send data are open to public inspection and even a bit of modification. Ruben Canlas, an IT consultant for the Asian Development Bank, has built a business around open source software.
Kuha tayo ng analogy. Kung magluluto ako ng food, yung recipe ko, yun yung aking source code. So what we're saying is, kumbaga sa open source, pag may papakain ako sa yung pagkain, bibigay mo rin sa akin yung recipe at pwede kong tingnan yung kung anong steps ang ginamit mo at anong ingredients ng paggawa.
The beautiful thing about open source, every user can make modifications for his own use.
Canlas cites the popular web browser Firefox as an example of open source software. Linux, an operating system beloved by extremely tech-savvy people, is another. But is free or open source software reliable?
Lahat ng mga standards na ginagamit ng internet are actually open source. We cannot have the World Wide Web as we know it today kung walang open source. HTML itself is open source. If you look at under the hood, yung behind the scenes na nagpapatakbo ng internet, for example, almost 70 to 80% of the servers running on the internet are actually open source.
When people see vulnerabilities, they write fixes to cure the vulnerabilities of the system, and they do it for free.
Manalastas says that some countries have actually already implemented open source election systems. In the US, there is a movement called the Open Source Digital Voting Foundation that advocates using open source software. Being free, it also cuts down the cost of automated elections. Manalastas says the Department of Science and Technology's Advanced Science and Technology Institute could easily adapt open source code for the COMELEC. Canlas, meanwhile, says that besides reliability, open source answers the need for transparency.
Yung voting is the core of Philippine democracy. It is the core of our exercise to have democracy. it should remain transparent. Elections are yung fundamental expression of our democracy. Why are we handing it over to a couple of businesses who won't even say how they count our votes?
Well, talking about open sourcing elections is well and good, but implementing it is another matter entirely. And that is just what our next guest did. Joining us now are members of the UP Linux Users Group who developed their own open source software called, appropriately enough, Halalan. This was actually used in last year's UP Student Council elections. We're joined by JP Bernardo, the president of Unplug, and Halalan project manager Rystraum Gamonez. JP and Rice, thank you very much for coming to the show. Open source to the uninitiated would mean that the code, the program code, is actually open to anybody who wants to make modifications or improvements, right?
Yes.
All right, so exactly how did you create the code for Halalan?
Okay. Well, Halalan was...
Let's choose between A and B. All right, Rice, you go ahead.
Halalan was developed by our senior members. So it was they started developing it in 2004,
Okay.
and then by 2005 they actually started sort of test runs to test the code. Basically, it's written in PHP. They used a framework called CodeIgniter.
Yeah.
And then back-end database, they use MySQL.
Now, why did you choose Linux precisely as an operating system?
Well, the Halalan software per se doesn't really need to run on Linux because you only need to have a web server. So web servers are available in Linux, Windows,
or Mac
Unix,
OS.
Mac. Yeah. So per se, the software itself does not really need to run on Linux, although it would be much better to run on Linux.
All right. You know, while we're talking here, I can hear a really noisy fan. That must be coming from your machine, because mine is pretty quiet. All right, so 2004 was exactly when you guys thought of coming up with the software for this. And I can imagine why in 2004, because we had a national election that many people said wasn't exactly honest and accurate, right?
Not exactly.
Not exactly, but was that the inspiration to try to come up with something like this?
Actually, it's more of the same, only to a much local level. It was actually the counting in the UP Student Election Council that was exactly the inspiration for coming up for the software. So maybe it's the idea is the same. It's inefficient. It takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And one of the goals is to have something that's fast, efficient, and then
and
reduce
honest.
costs. Yeah, honest.
Very important for honesty to be in an election, not just in a Billy Joel song. All right, well, JP, how does the system work? I mean, does anybody just log into the Halalan website on election day?
Actually, in UP, we get the database of the students. Then we use their student numbers as their login, and we generate a randomly generated password for security. So they log on using their student number and password.
Which means that everybody is like automatically, when you're enrolled, you're a registered voter.
Yes.
Yeah. So you get assigned a particular personal identification number.